Welcome to Deep Thoughts, Garage Edition here. It's going to rain out here, so I thought I'd take it in my garage and see what I come up with. I have this distinct feeling about recording, but not a distinct feeling about what I'm going to record about. I'm trying to think about a subject that would match the decor. Part of me wants to do an episode on patience. But you know, what's a bummer about these subjects that you sort of need to hear, like patience, is that nobody wants to fucking listen to you. Because they don't have any patience. Oh, the irony. Let's talk about patience. I know that sucks. You're like, God damn it, let's talk about fucking spaceships. This will be the least watched episode on planet Earth. How about that? Why is it difficult to have patience? You ever think about that? Why is it difficult to have patience? What are the benefits of having patience, right? Do we even give a shit? Do we give a shit that we have patience? What do we get if we have patience? Usually the results of what we're looking for in life are a lot bigger. Just one-to-one correlation. More patience, better results, higher quality results. Usually patience leads to longevity, meaning the results that you gain last for a lot longer. If you're like me, you grow up and you understand patience is something that exists, even though it is very ambiguous, especially as a child. And then no one really knows how to get any, specifically, right? And so you're kind of burdened with this ghostly apparition of an emotion that will determine whether or not, it will determine the amount of, 10-star rating you get in terms of the quality of human being you've turned into, provided you get some. But perhaps the best way to look at this is to look at it from the opposite angle. What is impatience? Because that we all have. That we have sort of an ample supply. The less that we understand life, the more we have that free commodity. Impatience. It all comes down to wanting things to change. You desire a state change in your life, and you can't make it happen as quickly as you want the state change to occur. And so you either abandon it altogether and say, I don't have the patience to wait around for this to occur, and so I'm going to go do something else. Or I'm going to do a half-assed quick execution of whatever it is I'm trying to do, and I will regret it for the rest of my life because it might be the difference between winning and losing in life, right? But we want this stuff, don't we? Haven't you ever met someone who you revered, a female or a male? Perhaps they're older and they just seem to be cool cats. They kind of have had the patience, or they've developed the patience. And you're thinking, how the hell did they get that? Now, some of you will recognize in life that obviously our paths are different. And so at some points, some people gain patience because they've had it good. They were born into a really wealthy family. They didn't have to get jobs, and so they were able to sit around and relax, maybe even criticize the lack of fabric of people that do have to get jobs. But in the end, they get to chill out. Now, again, when that happens, I think that we all need to recognize that we're at different levels in our life journeys, for a bunch of reincarnated souls that never die. Sometimes you come in at level 1, and sometimes you come in at level 10. Steven Spielberg is on level 1 or 2. The Slumdog kids are on level 9 or 10 because they didn't get imbued with wealth and opportunity and nepotism like some folks do. But now patience is usually agreed upon as something that we have to gain through that horrible kind of going through the eye of the needle, right? When you meet an athlete and you ask them how they got where they got, They just say, years and years of experience and trial and tribulation and sacrifice and not eating the pizza and, not hanging out with my friends and like I just sacrificed. You talk to a person who's a master guitar player or any type of musician. How'd you learn that? Well, while you were hanging out with your friends, I was sitting in here by myself practicing with a bunch of other geeks or whatever, making sacrifices. They obviously had a tremendous amount of patience. I think practicing an instrument, which is interesting. When I was a kid, they used to always say that in Russia, as part of the Soviet Union's, industrialized education, that you had to learn how to play an instrument, you had to learn how to be an artist. Obviously, all of your reading, writing, and arithmetic had to be amazing. And I think even like dancing or something was imposed on you, something like that. And I used to think, ooh, that's gross. And when I think about it in the end, what Russia was doing is ensuring that the average IQ in Russia was high. And that, just like the book Gödel, Escher, Bach, which combines 3 different, disciplines of science and thinking, but they were rounding off the interior mind of a Russian citizen. In America, it was sort of, well, you get the basics in K through 12, and then because we're America, you'll always pick up a guitar. You'll go dance if that's what you want to do. You'll round yourself out, and your parents are supposed to actually raise you and not let you just, meander around in life. And so when it came time to take America down, it was pretty damn easy because nothing was industrialized into our education, right? So if you're younger and you haven't had any kids yet, or your kids are too young and you haven't gotten to the stage yet, or it's your first kid and you're still figuring it all out, the first point I learned more about patience was when I had the responsibility of making sure my child had some. And man, was it crazy. Because it is a nebulous thing. It's a higher concept for the mind. We like to think that every emotion that we have as human beings is sort of on the same playing field, right? Being happy and angry kind of feels like it's sort of some rudimentary feelings, and every child understands that pretty easily. It's not, ethereal or abstract for their minds to believe, but patience is something that is one of the higher order thoughts that you can have as an adult. It really is, right? Anytime your child crosses over the concept of death, it's tough to explain. Because if you just teach them, it's when you go to sleep forever or something like that, or they go to heaven, they can barely conceive of going to sleep forever. The concept of heaven, well, obviously there's some of us that think that would be pretty challenging to make this stateless place fun. But we use it as a Band-Aid really, really quickly on our kids. And then, of course, we wonder why people believe in kooky things when they get older. It's because we've been using kooky things to satiate children. Don't be afraid. So how do you begin with a kid? I think the thing is that you don't really mention the word patience. Now, I mentioned a few episodes back about boredom. Boredom's very interesting. As a kid, just to repeat it real quick, my mom would just say, you're bored, go find something to do. Really simple. It's kind of cool, right? And if you're bored and you go find something to do, then guess what you're learning? Patience. Sort of walking in the door. You're just putting your foot in the door of patience. I think cooking for children is actually a pretty good methodology. They want to bake a cake. Well, what kid doesn't want to eat that cake the second it goes into the oven? Cooking cookies, making cookies, whatever. Every kid wants it right away, but you have to wait. Used to have these things called shrinky dinks when I was a kid. These sort of vellum, plastic sheets that you could draw all over and then put them in the oven and cook them. You could turn them into jewelry and stuff. It's totally bitching. It's probably one of the cooler things that was around. But then again, you had to have patience to watch things, finish up their cycles. I think most adults understand that patience is just a muscle inside the mind. But what is the huge, huge problem with kids today? That is a multi-pronged monster that is eating up our children. It's the fact that television has been engineered, I mean scientifically, psychologically engineered to make your children have no patience whatsoever. The problem is, as soon as the television turns off, just like a gyroscope that has been wound up or a child that's been given too much sugar, the kid turns into a maniac in your house and doesn't have the ability to focus, doesn't have the ability to focus at school. The second that heavily engineered problem of letting them watch too much goddamn television starts to become a noticeable psychological and physical problem, you take them into the nurse. Usually the teacher will just take them into the nurse without your knowledge, and they get diagnosed with the ADD. And then here come the prescriptions. Adderall, Ritalin, probably some vaccinations. And your kid starts to lose their mind. And then the entire reason of why you would have a child has been flushed down the toilet because they've just ruined your child's mind. Your family line won't continue because no one's going to date your kid, no one's going to marry your kid. So from that perspective, I think that elongating the attention span and thus the patience possibilities, the patient pool, is vital. It's a big, important thing. And again, just like I always say, we're never talking about these things, these really important things. Now, when I had my daughter, I knew my kid wanted to watch a little bit of television. It's obviously very difficult for, as a parent, no matter how much you love your child, you simply cannot sit with them every single moment of every day. Let's do this, let's do this, let's do that. One, it would create a massive dependency between the two of you, but, would prevent your child from thinking on their own, coming up with what, makes them who they are, that kind of thing. So I knew that there was going to be time for her with her stuff, with her art supplies and all that good stuff. And then there was going to be a phase where we just want to relax together. We watched plenty of stuff together. But I was really worried about television. I thought, I really don't want my child to watch TV at all. I was a big fan of Steve Jobs and sort of his fabled methods of raising his children without television. I would love to know the truth behind that because none of the biographies have really talked about really what happened there. I think he kind of relaxed a little bit as he got older. And of course, he shared the majority of the responsibility with his wife, who really did most of the work. So I kind of found a bizarre, serendipitous thing. I wanted my daughter to see classic films with good moral upticks. That was important to me. So we picked out a series of films, I did, and let her see them. And then I would let her see them as many times as she wanted, in a row, etc., etc. And I knew that at no point is she getting harmed by these films. And the films were, Wizard of Oz, Explorers by Spielberg, Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. Just good, wholesome films. I figured life was going to teach my kid that that people suck sometimes. The nice thing about movies like, Willy Wonka and the Wizard of Oz is that there are mean characters in the film, but it's toned down to the emotional arc of a child, which is nice. But that was just the foundation. I wanted my kid to see films over and over again, one, because it would develop her memory. She would see the same scenes and anticipate and be able to sing along or whatever. I thought that was important. And the thing is that it taught her that events take a while. When the song starts, the song has a beginning, middle, and end. Because the song was always, Somewhere Under the Rainbow is a beautiful song, and if you want to hear it, you got to listen to the whole thing. And that sort of set the amount of units in her DNA that said this is what you have to engage to understand something, right? To experience something. But of course, my kid went home to her mom. And that house, just TV, tons of commercials, sped her back up again. Then my kid got old enough to play some video games. And I actually found out that the video games, certain kinds of video games, can actually extremely affect the unit of measure within a mind to invest to get something out of it. Started off with The Sims, which you could play for hours and hours and hours, taking care of families and making people pee and having babies and stuff. And then it escalated up to a game called World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft is probably one of the best games that you can let your kid play. And it doesn't matter if they play it for 12 hours straight. It doesn't. And the reason why is that the amount of stuff that you will learn playing World of Warcraft is phenomenal. First and foremost, you learn how to get along with other people as soon as you get to a level where you have to ask for help. And that's the way the game is designed. And you'll see these Midwestern kids who come from these homophobic states, and they'll immediately start using all of the slang that's been taught to them, and they'll immediately find out it doesn't work, that no one will hang out with them. Maybe their account gets banned. But what do they start behaving? That's good, right? It takes a village. I think we need to update that statement. Instead of saying it takes a village to raise a kid, it takes one game server to raise a child. World of Warcraft is also full of reading comprehension. So you get these quests to go do things. You got to read the quest. You got to figure out what the hell you got to do. A lot of the fights that you have to do against monsters aren't just sitting there banging on them. They're phased. They have, for the first 30%, you attack them this way. Then if you don't move out of the way in the next 20%, you're going to die because you'll get a curse and burn. You got to learn all your spells, all that stuff. So it's fantastic engineering of the mind to understand what the hell you're supposed to do in the game. But the coolest thing on the subject of patience is that you're going to have to do what's called a grind. Kill a bunch of monsters in a row. 20 of these things, 5 of those, collect 10 of these. You might have an achievement where you have like a quest chain. 10 quests that have to go in a row. Can't skip. And in the end, it elongates the unit of measure in the human mind to make people understand what they have to do. First-person shooters, not so much. About mindless shit that makes you lust for war. World of Warcraft and other MMOs of that caliber are completely the opposite. Exactly the effect you want to have on your kids. Now, you also want your kids to go out and get some vitamin D. And I would just be very straightforward with them. But what about us adults? What if you're way past your romper room days, you're way past your video game days, and now it's just time to get the patience as a 40-year-old plus person or whatever. I hate to throw out any ages because it's obviously has nothing to do with the number of years that our genetics have been on this planet. It has to do with how much your brain is developed. I feel like we're all the same age on this show, to be honest. What do you do? Well, I like to think in images, so let's get ourselves a little bit of an image in our minds about what patience might be perceived as. The problem with patience for me is that if it remains an ethereal definition, something that's very abstract, very cloudy, the problem is that we have no chance of mastering it. It's sort of an apparition that whispers in your ear that makes you patient or impatient. And man, do we need more control than that, right? We really do. So my take on the whole thing is I always think of your patience pool as sort of a glass with water in it. And it's either full, and it's your tank of gas that you're going to use to burn in order to get something to function in your life, right? And it's sort of the inverse of a normal tank of gas. What's a tank of gas do? Well, it gets combusted to do something, to turn over the combustion engine in your car. It's electricity that turns the motor in your electric car or whatever, right? But the patience pool is sort of a reserve attention span calmer, right? You are spending your patience pool to be okay with doing nothing, okay with watching toast brown, water boil. Well, I tell you what, it's going to sound ridiculous, but, boil some water, make some spaghetti, But instead of running off and doing something else, stare at it. Stare right at it. Put some salt in it to make it, boil a little faster. But try that. And it'll make other forms of meditation a lot more appealing. But now here's the thing. If you live in Los Angeles, there are several mechanisms that will make you patient because you have no choice. And one of the big ones is driving in LA traffic. But when you're in Los Angeles, let's go with this glass of patience pool water. And you wake up in the morning, you've had a good 8-hour sleep. You feel fantastic. You get your breakfast, whatever you're doing, and you got to go into Los Angeles for a meeting. And the drive up is pretty good. It's kind of scenic, once you kind of know your landmarks, it's really nice. And it's just an endearing city. It's in every single movie, every single television show. So, you're kind of like, it's just neat and all kinds of different architectural styles, a lot of Art Deco. But then you have your meeting, and you're probably doing something in your meeting that's setting up future events in your day that you need to actually execute other things. You're really finding out what you need to be doing. Then you hop back in the car, and it's 2:30, 3 o'clock. And that 45 to 50-minute commute north and off hours has just turned into about an hour 45 home. And I've discovered having a cigar on hand really helps. But you got to go home and do things too. Now, having a conversation with someone also will drain your pool. So you're driving up, and your patience pool's going down slowly. You get to your meeting. Regardless of how exciting it is, it's very stressful to play the chess game of a meeting, depending on what your role is in the meeting. In my experience, the more you're trying to get done in a meeting, the more it can sort of eat up your patience pool. It's a weird thing. Your ability to calmly relax and do what you're doing. Now, hopefully you're having a euphoric meeting. But it doesn't matter. I've been in meetings that, I'm sitting in 20th Century Fox, boardrooms where George Lucas negotiated Star Wars, and where Spielberg was outside waiting to bring in his next project too. And I'm sitting in these legendary places, but you're still exhausted after the meeting, whatever you're doing, right? Then you hop in the car, and it winds you down another hour and 45 minutes. And there could be, decent traffic that moves, could be a bunch of weirdos crashing into each other, almost making you crash into each other because one guy's looking at his cell phone. Then now you're home. 6 o'clock, you're wasted. You're utterly wasted. You're exhausted. You're mentally exhausted. You're physically exhausted. And in the end, you really didn't move that much. You sat on your ass in a car, and you pushed some gas pedals and brake pedals and steered the steering wheel. But for some reason, you're totally spent. And I know I'm mentioning this scenario because I know you have your own versions of that same scenario. Some of you are just parents. You get those kids up, getting them up, getting them dressed, getting them fed, getting them to school. You go do your job, and you reverse engineer the whole thing, make the dinner, get every kid to bed, argue with them, help them with their homework. You're trying to find some solace for yourself. Been there, done that. But there comes a point when your reserve tank of patience is really low. You're in your last, if it's an 8-inch glass, you're down to your last half inch or your quarter inch. And then life happens to you sometimes. Sometimes your spouse or your significant other is having an equally tough day, and they come home and you're just kind of bashing heads a little bit. And you just don't have it. Neither one of you have it for each other. You love each other, but man, you just don't have it. Could be you and your kids. The reason why I want this analogy driven into your mind is that I need you to be able to see it in your head, and I need you to be able to repeat it to someone else. If you can tell your spouse, hey, I'm really running on empty here. That commute today was just brutal. The meeting was really stressful. It's all good, right? In the end, there's sort of an uptick of how great the day's actually been, but I just need to chill out. And if neither one of us have enough patience to really take care of the kids, then we're going to have to figure out a way to kind of combine our tanks and get them to not know that mommy and daddy have had a rough day. Or maybe we need to communicate to the kids that it's been a really tough day, but it's been a great day. Let the kids know it's all positive, but we're just super tired. What I find with kids is that you try to remind them of eras in their life or days in their life where they are sort of having a metaphorical, identical experience to what you're experiencing, right? You can say, remember Monday when you were not feeling so well and I tried to get you up and you're like, yeah. Well, that's sort of how daddy's feeling right now. I just need an hour or so just to relax. Would you mind watching your movie again or playing in your room or whatever? And they usually love being involved with, grown-up solutions like that. Now, the bummer is the liar scenario where you've committed to doing something really exciting that day and you just don't have it in you, but you're going to do it anyway. But now, patience. Let's take a deeper dive into what the emotional chronological chain of events, that's occurring in the human body that either make that the patience exist or not exist. What's going to fill the tank back up, essentially, right? Cooking is an amazing analogy. I didn't realize this when I started, but think about it. Why do people love microwaves? Because they become impatient with the way that we used to cook food in a healthy manner. Microwaves aren't good for your food. Hell, it's not even good for your water. I remember when instant pudding came out. It was gross pudding, right? It was like pudding that was all sandy in your mouth, and it just tasted like shit. But our impatience made it okay. And then every once in a while, Grandma would make the old kind and have to stir the pot, keeping it from sticking to the bottom of the pan until it boiled. And that's it, man. Just powder, milk, boil, pour it into bowls, put it in the fridge, whatever you want to do. And it was the best stuff on planet Earth. But we want shit fast, right? We want it, and we want it right now. And most of the technology in the world that we endorse is all about the improvement, which is measured by shortening the time it takes to wait for things. And what's the goal there? The goal there is to get more out of life. That's the sales pitch of most marketing departments. Get the most out of life. Quick, fast, in a hurry. Flavor vision ain't blurry, right? What's really interesting about this is that we have this notion of heaven, right? Got to go to heaven. And then you ask a Christian all about heaven. I've never asked a Muslim, but you ask a Christian about heaven, it's this stateless world of pure euphoria. And it's sort of like, I don't know. The only vision I've ever had in my mind is sort of everyone sitting at a big table eating cake constantly and not gaining any weight. I mean, it's the fucking opium den of God. You're just all sitting there sucking on poppy seeds or... Well, imagine some short attention span theater human being taking that... Let's say their body actually affected their spirit, and they go to heaven, and they're sitting there and nothing's happening. They're just fucking coked out of their mind. I mean, what kind of weird-ass place would that be? There hasn't been a single definition of heaven put forth that I would consider being a part of or behaving on this world to be a part of at all. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Dying, taking a break, having some fun, maybe doing some things at some point of you can have everything that you want based on what your body taught your spirit in this last journey. Maybe. I think that would be cool. I think it'd be sad to build up a bunch of desires in this world that are just, little things. I wish I'd gone to Rome or Paris or whatever. I never get a chance to do it until you get recycled. Who knows how this joint's put together in the end. The patience is pain. That's what it is. The pain that we are not getting what we want as quickly as we want. And maybe it has the higher level concept attached to it, which is I'd rather be doing more with my life. And so impatience is getting angry, taking that pain and turning into anger, and then being cantankerous to our friends and family. Doing dumb things by ourselves. Now let me throw this at you while I've got it in my mind. Have you ever been in an argument with someone and you get really heated, whatever your version of that is. And then you hear later, never take any major actions when you're pissed off. It's just you're wound up with a bunch of emotions, and you're not going to use words that you would normally use after you calm down. You're going to create memories that you definitely don't want, and you're potentially going to walk right in the Hall of Fame of regret and put a bunch of trophies on the wall for yourself. True regret is something that you can never get rid of. It is a remorseful thought that you can never, ever seem to find a way to get rid of in your life. That's why I think infidelity is probably one of the highest regrets that someone can have, because it injures trust, it injures your overall grade in the school of life. And it takes decades to convince anyone that you're not going to do it again. But even in the back of your own mind, if you do that, you're like, shit, I am that person. I get, if the perfect storm happens, man, I'm laying down with that person or doing whatever is considered infidelity. But it could be cheating in business. It could be stealing. So imagine you're in this pocket of impatience. Now, what's nice about life is that we actually do have some techniques or we do have moments, I should say, where we can use techniques to fill up a gap and live more life when there is no other way to do it. Like, there's nothing else to do, it's like if you're home, you got your laundry done, your house is clean, all this good stuff, and now you're cooking spaghetti for your family or whatever. I only say that because you got to boil water to do it, right? And for whatever reason, every single thing that you could be doing is done. Yeah, there's always Facebook. By God, after a while, though, you just get to the point you want to puke on your phone. By the way, there is a fabulous addition to the Black Mirror series on Netflix called Nosedive. I've already recorded my social media episode, but I had an audio problem at the end because my computer turned off. Not overheated, yeah. So I'm thinking about redoing that episode completely, just to push in Nosedive. But this whole thing of being satiated constantly, we know that's the problem in the world, and the internet is sort of a dangerous little mechanism to shorten those units of measurement. But there are definitely going to be moments when you can run off while the water's boiling and you can do other things. Start a load of laundry, whatever. Have that conversation with your kid to make sure that they've done their homework or whatever. And then there's going to be that point when there's nothing. Now, if you're one to study meditation, you might look forward to those little moments to sort of find yourself. Your moment of Zen, as they used to say on the Daily Show before Jon Stewart took it over. But let me throw this at you. There are a lot of things in life that we know about that when we wait and we are patient, whether it be by a mistake or very intentional use of time, the rewards are phenomenal. I think that probably a good portion of the listeners have made love to someone before. And we all know there's something called the quickie, which is sort of an advanced form of making love to someone that you know very well. And then there's making love. Something that has a beginning, middle, and end. That has a build-up of physical payoffs, of emotional payoffs, and the amount of bonding that you have with an individual when you're in that state is phenomenal. The quality of it's phenomenal. Keep that in mind when you're watching the water boil. Sometimes you can throw a meal together really fast and it's phenomenal. But usually the selection that you have to choose from and to throw in together a salad and all this other stuff, it's eventually you get tired of salad, right? You know that you like going to restaurants because someone in the back is doing all that hard work while you're paying for the service and probably enjoying a moment to yourself or with someone else in the restaurant, developing a relationship, a friendship. I'm giving you tons of contextual examples because, again, patience is this sort of abstract concept. But I think with a little bit of work, we can make it very literal right in front of our face. You know, there's a lot of us that suspect that this is a recycle game, that we die, we get resurrected, and that's what has to happen because if you lived forever and remembered everything that you ever learned, life would be really boring very quickly, relative to infinity. But we don't know that's exactly how it works. But if we could put our minds around it and hold the concepts in our hand like glass balls, right? Then we could make much more educated decisions about what we do in this life. What's important, what's not important. Think about all the emotions that we have that make us lose control. Fear, anger, impatience. We do silly things, sometimes destructive to ourselves, sometimes destructive to others. And destructive could be an action where you change the state of the universe. You wreck your car, you hurt someone physically, whatever, emotionally. Sometimes the destructive force is that we just don't do anything at all. Maybe we fear that we should have. A good friend of mine that I spoke with made a fantastic analogy. He's a hiker. He gets up every day and he hikes. He'll drive all over Los Angeles to find a good place to hike. And he's just a nature guy. He is your quintessential lumberjack dude. He is. And he just loves nature. So he goes out there by himself and he just gets into all of it. He just absorbs the trail, the earth, the plants that grow off of it, the sky. He just loves it. And one of his big complaints the other day was interesting, is that he's finding now that a bunch of the, I would say, he's technically Gen X, I believe, but he's saying all the other generations are bringing out these audio speakers, these little Bluetooth audio speakers, and they're walking around out there in the woods listening to music in a very overt way that everyone else has to ingest their music. And his complaint is, look, if you're going to hike in the woods, then either you're here to do this or you need to stay home and listen to your music. If nothing else, put some earbuds on, and no one has to hear what you're listening to. But preserve nature for the rest of us that enjoy nature. And his comment that I thought was brilliant was not just that. He said, it is if you are terrified to sit with your own thoughts. You're terrified to hear your inner voice. And that is a big theme on this show, right? And I think that's one reason why he and I see eye to eye on life. He's 100% correct. So now if we can itemize, impatience, this moment where we're sitting there with our own thoughts, we're concerned we're not living life to the fullest, like all the marketing divisions of the world are trying to make us terrified about. Maybe we rebrand the moment to be a little bit more productive in our own eye. Now, I made an episode on self, and I haven't seen it in a really long time, so I'm not sure what I said. I'll have to look at my teleprompter script to figure out what I was supposedly said. Today, I actually have my computer right in front of me, recording the sound. But now, what sort of inner voice would be fun to listen to, and what inner voice would not be fun to listen to? If we thought we were successful in life, the inner voice might be a lot more entertaining to hear. If we have a project in our life that needs to be thought through, needs mental contribution before any actions can be taken, then that might be more interesting to listen to when you're listening to your thoughts. But what sort of thoughts would suck? It does make you more impatient. I think it would be if you perceived your life as not being so successful, which in my experience in parsing people's lives, when they say that to me personally, I don't think my life's that great, blah, 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 it's almost never the case. It's almost never the case. There's two things that's going on, when you don't think your life is going great. One, if you take the analogy, the physical analogy of peaks and valleys, you're either going up or you're going down. The only reason why you really go down typically is because you don't know you're going down. There's that old technique of writing everything on a piece of paper that you think sucks about your life, or that you think you need to have. Or usually it's usually what you think sucks in your life. I got too many bills, blah, blah, blah. But the reason why psychologists and career managers always make you do that step is because once you see it written down, you barely can get to 10, if even 5, And you realize, well, that's not that horrible. I can fix those things. I just got to do this, this, and this. And then all of a sudden you kind of have a plan. And that unknown that's been haunting you, God, am I going to die? Is this am I going to go bankrupt? It's not there anymore. That feeling is not there. So obviously, if you have something chronic going wrong in your life, you want to address it very head on, such that when you get a pocket of time, an air pocket of life, which you might call, a moment where you need some patience, you're okay with yourself. It's not going to be the end of the world. Now, if you're like us on this show, right? We're in a research program for what we are when we're in this reality and what we are when we're in dream reality. And I mean that quite literally. How many times do you really sit and feel what you are? All of us look out of two eyeballs. We really feel like our consciousness is in the back of our head. But because we can open up a human body and find a brain inside of a skull cavity, we think, well, somehow it's that massive mass, and we know when the brain gets hurt, we die. And so I must just be a Kurzweil big bag of chemicals. But the more we understand about computers, the more the brain becomes more primitive in its design, and does not account for the spirituality that we exude, that we feel. So maybe part of being in your own voice is to simply, or finding that pocket of time, watching the water boil, is just a moment where you start to kind of have fun with reality. For a split second, there are no more rules. That, who cares about your bills and all the responsibilities in life? You're only going to have 5 minutes to stare at this water, or 10 minutes before it boils anyway, so it's not a tremendous loss of your life. But what if you were able to enlighten yourself for a split second as to your very being? Even if that you just increase the hunch of what you might be as a person, what's important to you. There's usually two philosophies of how you get epiphanies in this world. If you're a atheist, you'll usually divide the mind down into sort of your Freudian base, the ego, the character, and the persona, and somewhere down there in the deep bowels of the ego, or the id, you think that your mind processes stuff in some massive supercomputer down there, and eventually when you quiet your mind, the idea presents itself, whether it be a solution or a concept, and you have an epiphany dug out of the interior of your mind. If you're more like the Philip K. Dick scientific belief that we are a symbiotic life form with a spirit and a body, and the mind is merely the consciousness that's been shoveled into your short-term memory, then you'll believe that you are drawing on a database supercomputer that is the universe itself. If you take a more spiritual realm on top of that second example, you might believe that God himself is imbuing you with ideas. That perhaps if you believe in the spiritual realm, then you might believe it's an old relative, an old friend who's passed on, who's helping you out, or maybe even a random alien that's never been a human being. So if you have any one of those three belief systems about how we get epiphanies in this world, invention, mechanical invention, story invention, what you should be doing the next 5 minutes or 5 days, then those moments where you're by yourself, listening to yourself, watching that water boil, is actually more of an opportunity to hear something that you've never heard before. But now let me throw this at you. I sort of have a suspicion that every single one of you has a love. And it's better if the love I'm talking about isn't a person. It's better if what I'm talking about is a hobby of some sort. And it's not a hobby that is based on watching every single Star Trek in a row. It's more of a creation hobby. You are creating something. Maybe you're researching something. If you've ever engaged in something like that in your entire lifetime, you will know very well that you have had to engage your patience circuit to make it occur. But then there comes this absolute sweet spot where you realize, well, everyone else viewed this as work, but I didn't view it as work because I really enjoyed it. But how many times have you described your impatience as, I just wanted this to happen, and it was taking forever. If I could just speed this up, life would be so good. And maybe in a lot of cases, you're absolutely correct. I have not met a single adult, and you could determine whether or not you are one or not, but I have not met a single adult that has ever looked at a coked out kid on sugar, on TV, who watches them just bounce around the universe incessantly with no stopping, and has said, gosh, I wish I was like that. Because usually we recognize the dangers in that situation when it comes to life, because the world has an ecosystem and a pace, and a day is 24 hours. And it's unforgiving, right? And we understand that life's accomplishments are in categories of how much effort it takes to get a particular type of accomplishment. And there's a theme in life that I've talked about a couple times. I even put it in my scripts from time to time. And I call it the lottery ticket theme, which is that in today's day, because the overall uncertainty of this world is higher than it's been in for a really long time, we want the lottery ticket win. We put in so much effort and we win the lottery. That ticket shows up and it says you have enough money that you don't have to work anymore and don't have to worry about all this stuff. And then it won't matter how much patience you have because you escaped if you play your cards right. But here's what's kind of funny about lottery winners. The reality of lottery winners is that the overwhelming majority of lottery winners, regardless of their payout, become penniless after they win. And the reason is that what they took in mentality into the win was impatience. And they spent a bunch of their money. When I lived in the Silicon Valley during the internet boom, I knew of a lot of people, and I still have some pretty good friends that cashed out in that model. The funny thing was, I was at Electronic Arts, and there were some pretty smart guys, but not brilliant guys, not inventors or anything. They never made a game that was ever super famous, but they joined another company at the sweet spot where they were given a lot of options to join, and that company went public, and they got away with I don't know how much money, millions. And some of them to this day have managed their wealth very, very wisely, and they're doing great, and more power to them, right? But I saw a lot of guys run into a lot of money. And I can't remember the guy's actual name, but there was a guy that was very close to me in at least my circles, and he had he had gained somehow through some IPO or something about $11 million. And foolishly, he didn't realize that when Uncle Sam comes to steal your money, but he bought a house, bought some stuff, took his family on a tour around the world, and didn't do any math to figure out that he was about to run out of money at his current burn rate. He was living like he was a 100 millionaire with that money in the bank in cash. And I think within 3 years, it was all gone. Sure, he had some assets, but he had a home that he couldn't pay the utility bills on. He had cars he couldn't register. And here he is with his wife and his kids. I'm sure he had promised them that they would never have to worry about anything, and his kids were going to have to get student loans because that 1 in a million chance that he was so blessed to experience was pissed away by his own ignorance. He's not a bad guy. He was just ignorant. He was just ignorant to how to do it. No one had ever taught him. But I believe that it was him taking his impatient mind into a marathon play of parlaying $11 million up. If you really think about let's say we're able to get $1 million in the bank after taxes. Just think about that for a split second. Well, I can tell you in California, in order for a household to have the chance of keeping a wife at home, to raise the kids, to pay for the kids' colleges and all that. Well, the kids' colleges are going to run $100,000 a pop, minimum. And if they're young, you have no idea how much that's going to cost when it comes up. So out of your $1 million, you're probably going to set aside $250,000 just for education if you have 2 kids. Well, that only leaves you $750,000. Well, the amount of burn you're going to have every single year is at least $120,000, $150,000 a year just to replace the salary that you would have if you got a good paying job in California and could compensate for your spouse being at home. So what's that leave you? 5 years? 5 years of not having to work? And then what? You're totally penniless. So our perception of what we need to win this lottery is usually very inaccurate. So how do we get it? How do we get patience if we don't have it? Well, again, I will repeat that I believe that you do have a pocket in your life where somehow it's the perfect thing that you do and you have patience. So try to find what that is right away, because you can leech off of that feeling to make sure that you can borrow those techniques into your present, right? But let me go back to the beginning. There is a stick, I think in Paris, that is the meter stick, right? Someone arbitrarily, I think it's a gold rod, right? Something like that. And that gold rod is the standard of what a meter is. And from there, we use base 10 mathematics to find out how big a centimeter is, a millimeter, a kilometer, etc. All right. And we accept that if you accept metrics, that rod is the standard, right? Well, here's what I believe about patience. Inside your being is a unit of measure that is dynamic. It can grow and it can shrink. It is the unit of measure that is measured in time, that is your native ability to feel patient for things without state change. You're in one state of being, you're in traffic, you're doing something, you're standing in line somewhere, you're waiting for water to boil, and immediately from the moment that the things, the overall state of your life doesn't change, that timer goes off inside your body. And it's ticking down really fast. Well, it's ticking down in 1 second. 1 second at a time. We have the ability to add seconds to the master unit of measure in our body. We do. We also have the ability to shrink the unit of measure. We know that when we allow children to watch television, the unit of measure is proportional to pretty much every single time the scene changes in a television show, cartoons. What do I mean by that? Every time they change the camera angle, whether it be a cartoon or a real show, that is the unit of measure that the brain is taught. And why is that? Specifically the camera changing? Because your eyes are 2 cameras. They give you 3-dimensional vision. I've been staring out my garage now for an hour and 15 minutes, minimum. Nothing in front of me has changed. There hasn't been a single person walk in front of me. That my car is still in the same spot. It did rain for a split second. I saw the Blue Angels do some stuff off the coast over there because we're having an air show. Smoking a cigar. Smoking cigars is interesting. You'd have to check your allergies to tobacco or whatever, but these things take an hour to 2 hours to smoke. It'll force patience into you, especially when you're smoking by yourself in your patio. But even when you're smoking with your friends, there's some downtime. You're listening. You're having conversations. A good conversation means you stop thinking over your other friends' words and you listen to what they're saying. You try to figure out why they're saying what they're saying and get into it empathetically and get on topic, and then it's your turn to talk, and it goes back and forth. I've talked about on the show a couple times that Hollywood used to have wide shots that went long. Stanley Kubrick is a genius at this, and it's what you typically called an establishing shot. when you're changing venues or changing scenes in a movie, you were inside an apartment complex in New York City, staring at penthouse windows, letting some dialogue occur, and then the next scene that needs to occur is the guy that's stuck in the desert. Or a UFO is going to land somewhere. A smart director will find the most gorgeous shot with the DP, set up the camera, shoot it, and the information coming in that lens tells you the time of day, where you are, probably the overall sentiment that you would have that hopefully is the same as the person next to you by looking at that scene. Those big long shots of Tatooine in Star Wars, it really made you feel like you were out of this world because of the rolling sand dunes, right? Most of us don't live in the desert in the Western world, so for us it was out of this world. And then two robots show up arguing over what they should do next. Now, the ideal irony of gaining patience is that you would be able to impatiently gain patience. I want to quickly gain patience. I want you to think about that unit of measure inside your mind. Think about maybe some short-hanging fruit in your life where you do have a little bit of patience for this. For whatever reason, I like watching the washer and dryer do what they do. I like, whatever it is, right? Something. You make bread and you like the dough machine that you have that needs it. And you just sit there and stare and get lost in it, right? There are videos on YouTube, which it'll be like something like oddly satiating video, and it'll just be videos of weird things like cutting clay or creating something, doing something, watching water pour into a glass in slow motion, those kind of things, right? And the nice thing about those videos, even though they change every few minutes, is that it's sort of making you stop and smell the flowers in almost an atomic level of your life. Wow, this stuff does happen. I don't even think about it. I plant a seed and it becomes a tomato plant or a flower. And you time-lapse that, and all of a sudden you can sit and watch it. And even if it's really, really slow time-lapse, you're still fascinated to see how it does what it does, right? You sort of become one with the universe when that kind of stuff happens because you're watching the bowels of the universe do what they do. You watch the golden mean determine how genetics grow out of the ground. My main advice is that you have to increase the unit of measure by which you have patience to put more volume on the glass. Maybe you start off and it's a thimble. You have a thimble of patience, just a tiny shot of whatever that is, and then it gets to a shot glass. Then it gets to a small drinking glass. Then it goes to an 8-ounce glass, 12-ounce glass. You get me, right? You want it to be pretty much a fuel tank, an aquarium full of water, more patience than you ever need. Now, my experience, it'd probably take a whole lifetime to pull off, but we know people that don't think much, and they can sit and stare and do nothing, and breathe out their mouth. That's probably not patience. That's probably something a little more docile and less productive. Hey, as long as they're happy, more power to them. If you're very sentient and aware, the more you become aware and the more you become more sentient. What I have found in meditation techniques is that like I said, I start studying what I'm feeling at any one point in time. What does my body feel like right now? What does my epidermis feel like? What does it feel like to have these clothes on? Can I feel my underwear on my pelvis? And how does my vision of life affect who I am? But that's just one introspective technique to do it. You don't have to go inside. You could be completely externalized. I'm looking at beautiful rain clouds that I hope start dropping some serious rain. But now, what if I told you that living life isn't always accomplishing something definitively? Like, this didn't exist and then it existed. This wasn't done and then it was done. Would that seem pretty counterintuitive? That maybe living is chilling and just being? It's almost like the difference between being satiated constantly by entertainment, maybe just being. I just thought of the analogy of, it's going to sound utterly crazy, but this will kind of get into the tank analogy of improving your patience pool. Most of us, after you gain a certain experience with your body at a certain age, will know that if you go to the restroom every single time you have to pee, your bladder will shrink. And if you're on a big, long trip with your family, if your father lets you pee every single time you have to pee, then you're going to have to pee all the time, and you'll never get anywhere. You're constantly pulling over to pee. But if you guys tough it out, and you don't want to let it hurt too bad, right? But if you tough it out once, the way I figured out to do this, you drink a bunch of water before you go to bed, and while you're asleep, you might have to get up and pee once, but it's just inadvertently will stretch you out so you can go a little bit further. But we've all done it, and we vacillate between going all the time and being a camel. Same thing with patience. We're going to ebb in and out of long cycles where our unit of measure gets really nice and long, and then you're going to have a good time for a long time, and you won't have had to have any patience, and then it hits you like a ton of bricks, and you're like, Jesus, I don't like this. The benefit is you gain a much more sentient control over your life. In America, like I've said a couple times in episodes in season 1, our mouths and our brains are wired with very short wires. The second American thinks of something, typically, unless you get much older and start to see the wisdom of other cultures, if we think something, we say it. And if we're in a conversation, we immediately blurt out what we're thinking. And the problem with that is without putting a pause in there, we really remove all doubt that we're not that intelligent in the end. If you're in a business negotiation, it's very dangerous to wire your instincts to your mouth, because you need to hear what the other person's saying. And just like a good chess move, chess players who are really good at it, they don't rapid fire chess unless you're playing rapid fire chess. But the reason why chess masters are as good as they are is because they think, 10 to 15 steps ahead. Everything that could possibly happen, they think it through. That requires patience, right? I know you feel me on this. I just think that this is such an abstract concept that when I get into these kind of concepts, I like to hit it from every meticulous angle I possibly can, because I feel like one of the coins is going to fall in the slots that's exactly the same size in your brain. And you're going to go, oh, I didn't get any of the other ones. I thought the other ones were stupid, but this one actually hit me. Life is not a bunch of impulse buys. It isn't. But corporations that are trying to make money off of us, they like that better, because an impulse buy has two things. One, it's a very quick purchasing process. But two, it represents something that you can't resist. Got to have it. Boom. Oh, hey, it's only $2. Let's do it. Mobile games. Mobile games have made really crappy games cost more than sofas in your house. The amount of guys that I know that have spent over $1,000 on casual games, one casual game, kept throwing money into it, like a Clash of Clans, to buy crystals to build up their defenses and stuff, all useless, amounts of money, when you could go down and buy a game back in the day for $49 or whatever, and you would play for 27 hours before you get to the first ending of the game. Most of the games are configured so you could play them over and over and it'd be different every single time. But a guy might spend $1,000 on a game that never looks any different. Because the guy spent $1,001, there's always someone who can kick your ass and makes you waste your money. Almost everyone you admire in life has a lot of patience. Usually. Be aware of the lottery ticket win and realize that that's not a way to build your life. The lottery ticket win is very popular in California because it costs a lot of money to be here. And people have won the lottery several times, and they've also had a lot of patience to earn the money to buy the big homes and the big cars and whatever. And so people look at them and they lust after their stuff and they say, I want to be like that, but I don't know how to do it. And it's really a matter of patience to research and build a business that will give them those accolades, right? Those rewards. And so I have a lot of friends that are always looking for the get-rich-fast scheme. And what's kind of funny is I have like friend A that'll criticize friend B for being get-rich-fast, and the only solution that friend A has is more get-rich-fast stuff. Strange. I encourage you not to be that way. But anyway, I know you feel me. Hopefully this was useful. Please post your comments down below if you have any techniques. I'm just one dude. If you dig the series, please subscribe. If you like this episode, please like. That's all I'm going to say. Take care of yourself and someone else. Let's be patient with each other, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.